Game 86 on the 27th of April 2024. Fulham versus Crystal Palace, titled Vowel Control. For the fourth day on the trot, London beckons, but this time not West London, but East-ish London, and London Bridge, and ironically, aside from South East London, playing a West London outfit. I sit on the choo-choo and it fills, and I get an overpowering smell of ladies' perfume. It is a nice fragrance, but after a while it's a little too overpowering, to the point of giving me a headache. I think she must have bathed in it. Why a headache? Overbearing smells give me headaches. Think about this. You know those high street shops called Lush? Good grief, I only have to walk past the shop and the fragrance is so powerful. And I'm not even in the shop. What about those poor souls who work there? I wonder what time the smell actually leaves their nostrils after work. You know, like when you've been to the dentist and had an injection, you go in at 10 a.m. and your mouth is still like a stroke victim's at about 4:30. I'm not kidding. You can't park near my dentist. One day, so I took the bus home after a large fill-in. I cannot remember how many people asked me to raise my arms, to act fast on my behalf. I was like a one-man Mexican wave, but at least the advert works. Anyway, the fragrance was nice to start with and then became noxious to the point of never wanting to smell it again. A bit like me and whiskey. I got very drunk and sick on it, and now I never touch it, and even a whiff can make me feel unwell. Off the train at Marylebone and fresh air. I've never really thought of the diesely smell and vape odour as fresh air, but hey-ho, it wasn't links for ladies. My old knee groans early and I start my shuffle and lurch gait towards the tube. Honestly, the Marylebone tube station entrance is packed. It looks like they are giving away free money there. It's just heaving. So I elect, with a groany knee, to walk to Baker Street. 5 minutes for the able-bodied, 10 minutes for me. I look up above the shop fronts at the architectures of the buildings, and then I stumble over an uneven paving slab. I regain my composure, then realise it had made some people smile. Glad to be a surface, wankers. I'm not too far from the tube station entrance and realise I have used up the majority of my quota of groany knee steps, and now I'm heading into the serious pain threshold step mode. Maybe walking was a bit overzealous by myself, and maybe I wouldn't have taken that trip, but at least I didn't have to send a postcard. The Jubilee line is crowded and the need for a seat is pressing. Now angry at my painful knees, and in fairness, anyone who is getting in my way, I'm now hoping the front carriages are going to be a little emptier. Victory is mine and I sit down. It's a 4-pace onto and swerve right movement that allows me a seat. But on sitting, the pain intensifies. I'm rubbing the front of the knee, the shins, the ankle, the back of my knee. I think I'm honestly going to have to do something about it this week. No more fanning around, even if I have to pay for a consultation. I need some answers as to why the pain is everywhere. I managed to get to London Bridge Concourse and grab my obligatory latte. My knee keeps aching and leads me to think this is a ploy by the current government to leave us in pain, run down the NHS and force us into private healthcare. Even if it isn't, it's fucking working. Up and into the studio booth, rearranged by yours truly, and prep finalities looked at. Chinwags done and pleasantries concluded. Team news is in, and today on one side I have a player called Muniz, and on the other side a player called Munoz. One letter, one vowel difference. It won't be hard, will it? My mind, my nemesis, actually chuckles at the prospect of these two being involved in a speedy passage of play leading to a goal. My mind lurks like a school kid in my day, looking out for a teacher whilst having a crafty fag by the bike sheds. It sometimes is full on, and on other times it just loiters with intent. Now, I remember Marco da Silva when he was at Watford and Everton. He had a good head of dark hair. He is not that old. But there are now some serious grey flecks in the barnet. Stress of being a manager. I gave my hair the opportunity of either going grey or falling out. Needless to say, it's falling like lemmings over a cliff. Down to strands, it is a case of when do I go for the close cut and forget about the combing style, or cling to Custer's last strands whilst looking like someone who shouldn't be near kids. Enough of my knee and hair issues. Silver is going silver, and Glasner hasn't been in the Premier League long enough to turn his Barnet yet. He is still enjoying his honeymoon period at Palace. Interestingly, in the first half, the pitch to my right had score marks on the pitch. About 6 or 7 flares have been thrown onto the pitch by travelling Palace fans. I still don't know how they get them in and where they get them from. I'd love to buy a pair. Kaboom! Flares, precursor to baggies and high-waisted patch pockets. I got mine via the usual route as a kid from my older brother's hand-me-downs. Now, this wouldn't have been an issue, but when I had 2 larger pairs heading my way, the trend almost overnight went to drainpipe and punk rock. You couldn't pogo in baggies, as when you bounced up you were okay, but coming down they inflated like a parachute and brought you down in slow motion. Plus, being out of fashion for the first pair whilst waiting to grow into the next pair meant ridicule from your mates for at least 2 years based on getting taller and how fast you grow. It could be longer, for fuck's sake. Oh, and by the way, after a goalless first period, Fulham take the lead when, you've guessed it, Muniz scores for Fulham. And my vowel control is right. Muniz, not a Munoz inside, and on a goal shout too. Small victories. But there is another goal to level things up, and it came from a rocket from the boot of Jeffrey Schlupp. Good lad, good player, but it reminds me of me doing a team news once and getting his name wrong. It took a lot of takes before I got to call him Jeffrey Schlupp. What did I call him several times? Jeffrey Slut. Slut instead of Schlupp during the pre-match news was like seeing a red button with the words "do not push" by it. You're going to push it. So I said slut once and my mind inserted the word every time I approached that line with his name in. Told you my mind loiters with intent. Jeffrey Slut. The game fizzled out to a draw. I post my considered and get Jeff's name right first time. Consummate professional. The return journey leaves me thinking about things once again, and I sit in the same place in the front carriage for my return journey, and I swear I can still smell that perfume. Is it the same train? I think it is. Again, I spend time thinking about what I'm thinking about. Why do I do that? I do have some vaguely serious thoughts about the world and its plight before heading into some propaganda social media. At that point, the influencer algorithms take over. And I still cannot understand how one search on the net for an obscure thing can suddenly make everything on Twitter X or Facebook pop up, throwing it in your face. We are obviously being controlled, both by social media and the money people of the world. I arrive home and still cannot remember why I searched the second-hand Hillman Minx hubcaps in the first place. But I now know where I can get them. A little aside here. As I'm diabetic, I take metformin. But this tends to give me wind. I know you don't need to know that, but I thought I'd enlighten you. Because when I've taken it, any sudden lurch by myself can lead to a sudden gaseous noise from my rear end. And as I arrive and got to move towards the front of the train, I rip an absolute beaut. I would have been proud of that somewhere quiet. It sounded like a motorcycle throttle winding up, but not on a busy train. At the start, I was worried about vowel control, and at the end, I was worried about bowel control. But one good thing did come out of my embarrassment. I think the passengers left on the train were thankful they didn't have to smell any more Lady Lynx. Every cloud and all that. Game 87 on the 29th of April 2024. Indonesia under-23s versus Uzbekistan under-23s. Titled Minefields. I have the perfect tonic for the Monday blues. My last game for the season, I think, at Gravity Studios in West London. You never know, you might get a call back for another game. My wife and I take coffee on the veranda outside. Yeah, outside Costa that is, before I'm taken to the station at Longhambra. I wander up and down the platform like a dog which goes around and around before plonking down, and I plump for the mid-platform close to the yellow line. A seat is imperative. It's okay though, as the train comes in. It's obviously not rush hour London train. It's fairly empty, and there is sufficient capacity to take the Longhambra faithful aboard. But slap me round the chops with a kipper. Oxford Station, next stop, and the platform is awash with prospective London-bound persons. The train and carriage fill very quickly. I'm all right, Jack. I have my seat. Then I gain a fellow traveller to the smoke. We do the cursory acknowledgement of each other before heading into our own world. I have a side-eye glance at the gent, or should I say young man beside me. Haven't had a full face look at him, but after a few minutes travelling, I notice a young lady who's on a rear-facing seat, basically staring at the guy next to me. Every time I glance across, she is transfixed by him. It is difficult for me to actually look at his face from the front, but a fixed stare makes me wonder if he's got some awful facial issue on that side that I can't see, or does she just find him terribly attractive? I manage to alter my position in my seat. I slightly lean forward, then bend forward before looking around at him and saying sorry for altering my position. Fair to say, even for this old heterosexual man, he is a bit of a looker. What I would have given to have those looks when I was younger, or even an old age version now. The young lady was still transfixed by him. She wasn't obviously aware of her stare, but it was obvious to me. She found him attractive. I sat back and looked out of the window and wondered what it would be like to be attractive to the opposite sex. You know, no one has ever looked at me like that. That is understandable because eye candy I am certainly not. With a head shaped like an oblong with rounded corners, a nose bordering on a trunk, and ears that Dumbo would be proud of. If a member of the opposite sex said, "Upstairs now," I think she'd be talking to her guide dog. But it opens up in my mind how we find things attractive and why we find things attractive. And do you know what? I end up with a very naive take on it. Stripping everything back to basics, it is just a natural feeling we are drawn to, like a colour, a shape or a sound. It cannot be explained and shouldn't to a degree be explained because it's natural. We like what we like. But in trying to even go down that minefield in today's world, it would see better academics derive my simplistic approach by saying there is a hidden sublime agenda. Simply put, though, I thought this young lady was attracted to the man next to me, nothing else. After my whirlwind mind conversation, I noticed the man next to me acknowledge the lady opposite with a smile, and she smiled back. And by the time we'd got to Paddington, they'd been married 4 years and had 3 kids. What makes us tick and what is natural and what fits into today's society is becoming very difficult to negotiate for someone like myself, who grew up and has now lived through differing descriptions of things and ages. But my mind thoughts for the journey had given way to a tube journey to Goldhawk Road and 3 bus stops up the knee screamer straight. As I approached the doors of mystery, I caught myself thinking about another season being almost over. I wander in after the buzzer goes and I open the right door. Took me all fucking season, but I got there. I sign in and make my way through to dear old Brenner's. We chew the fat. I don't know why we did, but he had some fat line there, so we did. Before I head off into booth 9 and start my pre-match prep. In a spare moment before kick-off, myself and Brenner discuss the upcoming summer of fun and what we'll both be up to. Brenner's was off to work at the Euros. I may get some Euro games in the Gary Briggs studio. And then he was off to work on the Olympics. I think I will be taking some time to breathe then. We also then discuss my final match between Indonesia under-23s and Uzbekistan, because this is the semi-final, and the winners, runners-up and third-place team of this tournament will play in Paris for their countries in the Olympic football tournament. The game doesn't give me the knots in my stomach, renames and situations, etc. And the underdog in me would love to see Indonesia go through. But Uzbekistan are overwhelming favourites with 4 games, 4 wins and no goals conceded ahead of this semi-final. And that is pretty much how it goes. Indonesia try hard and battle with everything they had. But in fairness, Uzbekistan controlled the game and eventually won by 2-0. VAR poked its nose in when it noticed a smed smatcher from Ridho, who definitely got the balls, and then his marching orders. So it was Uzbekistan who went on to the final, and Indonesia headed to the 3rd place match. As I said before, it is the last game of the season, I think, for me here at Gravity. And there is a sense of the last day of term between myself and Brenner's before we head into our summers. For me, it has been strange at Gravity this season. Nearly axed after missing a game, while sat in front of my computer in my pants, not Hugh Edwards in, and living under the sword of Damocles from that whilst the Trev Meister and Brenners fought my corner. The loss of the Costa around the corner where I go between games on 2-game Tuesdays. Squeaky boots, obnoxious train guards, and the doors of mystery amongst a host of other mindful thoughts. As is the life, though, of us freelancers, the future for freelancers is you never know if you'll be back or not, if contracts will be renewed or not. So goodbye could be goodbye. It always makes me think of a Facebook post I saw one day which says, "You never know when you were a kid and you go outside and play with your mates for the last time." That could be said for many things in life. I wander outside and order an Uber to Marylebone, as my PA had told me it's the best option bearing in mind the time constraints, and she was right, like she always is. I've only known her to make one mistake in our time together when she said "I do" instead of running for the hills. I wonder now if after nearly 40 years of marriage she might look at me and say, "Sex god, upstairs now." And I will live up to my reputation now as being great in bed, because I go straight to sleep with no fuss, I can assure you.